And for the final time this weekend, a warm welcome to everyone joining us from all over the world for the final race of the 2026 FIA Formula 4 Central European Zone Championship. This is the final race of this weekend here in Most in the Czech Republic, and it's the grand final. The top 32 drivers from this weekend are behind me or beside me for the pole sitter Elia Weiss on the starting grid here in Most. Elia has been incredible so far. He has taken the championship lead with 2 wins this weekend in the 2 races that he's driven in so far. Of course, with many drivers, a total
Česká státní Jana Vojtka a pojďme podávat pohádej tento třetí místo Barvách Express Autodrom má víc mejka. Na druhé místo Barvách tightest ale špílený a Polák po vítěze, který si právě teď rukoutání vystěnové převezme Jan Vojtko, GT Sports. Tak gratulace máme, čas na fotografii samozřejmě. Pánové a dámy, to bude tightest. Máme schodníky na 9 po dnešní sprintové závodě. Takže prostor pro fotografii právě teď a samozřejmě šampanské sebou dovolí poslední vítězů, jak chcete. Hledá další pódium Barcelonie. Let's move on. The next podium ceremony for GTC class history. International drivers joining us on the stage. In third place, the lead for P3 goes to Install Aldrich. Second place in Great Britain after yesterday's technical issue, please welcome Walther. A vítězem závodu v rámci kategorie GTC The Race winner representing the Simon Motorsport and from South Africa, Anthony Walther. Many congratulations to the top 3 drivers on the podium. Walther and Anthony Walther, the top 3 drivers with GTC class. Here comes now, ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of South Africa.
Back in the commentary booth for the 4th and final race for F4 CEZ this weekend in Most. It's the 4th round of the season. We've had plenty of fun and plenty of battles throughout these first 3 heats, and now it's time for the grand final. The top 32 drivers qualifying for this final race. We have every single big name in the championship who has made it through, and they're now ready to fight for one final race victory. Everyone will be trying to catch Elia Weiss, the new championship leader after winning in races 2 and 3. He is now back on top spot, and he is also starting from pole position ahead of Max Karhan with a Jenzer Motorsport 1, 2, 3, as Theo Borenstein also sits in 3rd position. David Walther in 4th with Alexander Bogunovic in 5th. Francisco Pio Coppola sits in 6th place with Ella Häkkinen in 7th, sharing an all-female 4th row of the grid with Matilda Paz in 8th position. 9th is Simon Rechenmacher, just in front of Marcus Silkunas. Both of them will be for sure wanting to make up some ground in this race. Dean Pedersen starts 11th with Leo Nilsson in 12th. Then it's David Gorczyca, Mio Ollert, Alexia Danielsson, Viktor Poulsen, Georgi Zazov, Patrik Lipovic, Stefan Tranensky, and Felipe Reis, rounding out the top 20. Behind them, Andreas Lobue in 21st position, the driver for Real Motorsport alongside Simon Antonio Bulbarelle. Then it's Eric Poulsen, Michalina Sabai, Igor Polak, and Antonio Rigo in 25th and 26th position. Piotr Orkowski in 27th, Tobias Paszko in 28th, ahead of Tomasz Rudokasz and Miroslav Kepak, rounding out the top 30. And then we have 2 more cars ready on the starting grid, and those are the ones of Bennett Gaspar and Albert Pisarik. So 32 drivers getting ready to make the most out of this final race in the Czech Republic before going on to a quite small break before the next round in Brno in a little over a month time. The championship thus staying in the Czech Republic, as of course the series will then move towards the Hungaroring for the final race weekend of the season. So if this is your first time joining us, let me explain to you what the format is for this weekend. Given that we had 39 cars on the entry list, drivers after qualifying were split into 3 different groups. These 3 groups then raced against each other, racing twice each throughout the opening 3 races of the weekend. And after that, the top 32 drivers between points scored and best finishing positions across these 3 races qualified for the grand final, thus unfortunately leaving out 7 drivers who were unable and will be unable to partake in this particular race. But we see plenty of fans in the grandstands waiting for the race to start. They have been very patient this weekend, and they are ready to see some more action here in F4. We've had a couple of red flags in the races before this one. The 2 won by Elia Weiss, in fact. Whereas in the first one, it was Max Karhan who took the win ahead of his compatriot Theo Borenstein for a Czech Republic 1-2. Borenstein, of course, starting this race in 3rd position, as we said before, and he's definitely going to be challenging for not just that win, but for the title indeed until the end of the season. He has been on a hot streak in the past couple of rounds, never outside of the top 2. He's won twice at the Slovakia ring, and then 3 consecutive second place finishes between the last race in Slovakia and the 2 that he's contested in this weekend in Most. Behind him is David Walther, who is going to start from 4th position today. The Danish driver has never been outside of the podium this season in the 10 races he's partaken in. Phenomenal consistency for the Dane, who has already won 3 times, twice at the Red Bull Ring and once at the Slovakia Ring in the final there, which makes him a prime candidate to potentially fight for the win today as well. Though the Mafia Racing driver didn't really show as much pace as some of his Jenzer Motorsport rivals did, most particularly Elia Weiss and Max Karhan, who looked tremendously quick throughout these first 2 races, especially Weiss taking home the win on both occasions. Karhan, however, on the other hand, being very good under the rain, being able to defend first place in a soaked opening race of this weekend. As you can see now, the grid full of people and drivers, and of course plenty of fans in the standings. It will be very interesting, especially for those drivers with a new set of tires, to see whether or not they will be able to go on the attack, and maybe that will be the case for Francesco Coppola, car number 78 that you see in the background. He was so close to take his maiden podium of the season in race number 2, but unfortunately, as he rose to 3rd place after a late safety car in race number 2, the red flag was shown, and therefore, as the classifications were taken from the previous lap, he was demoted to 4th once again, which is still his best result, or joint best result I should say, given that he was already 4th at the Salzburg Ring earlier this season. He was unfortunately knocked out of the top 3, and therefore would have to make it all over again should he want to finish on the podium this time around. He has a good opportunity starting from 6th position. He has to overtake 3 cars in front of him to get to the podium, but that is not impossible. We've seen also plenty of kids in the grandstands. It is, of course, great to see them out on track. Well, not on track itself, but of course on the outside of it. And it's also great to see these many families, of course, wanting to approach the motorsport. Most is one of the pivotal points for racing in the Czech Republic. We've had so many great memories from this circuit, not just in this event at the Racing Journal Speedfest, but also from plenty of other series coming here. Most importantly, the FIA Truck Racing Championship, the European Series, patronized by the FIA. And then, of course, we cannot forget about the World Superbike, which has been a feature on the Most calendar since 2021. Speaking of formulas, of course, F4 CEZ is one of the best championships to come here. It has always raced in Most since the rebrand of the championship in 2023. Championship that had started in 2022 when it was still the ACCR Formula 4 trophy. But ever since the 2023 season, we have seen plenty of drivers fighting tooth and nail here in Most. In 2023, when it was Ethan Isher who won the championship, part of that title, who he had won by just 2 points, was because of Most, where he took a spectacular triple win. In 2024, it was the only year where Jenzer Motorsport didn't utterly dominate around this track, as they only got 1 win with Max Karhan. On the other hand, it was Kirill Kutskov for Mafia Racing and Miroslav Mikes, who at the time was racing with JMT Racing, who took and shared the victories in a season then won quite comfortably by Oscar Wirtz. And last year, Gino Trappa, on his way to the title, won twice here in Most, with Javier Herrera winning the 3rd race. And Max Karhan was on that grid as well. He finished on the podium in all 3 races, as the Czech driver barely missed out on the title by just 9 points. He is therefore ready to change that this season, fighting tooth and nail for the driver's title, but he has some very stiff competition. Karhan, unfortunately for him, counting a to P25 in Slovakia in the grand final, where he was unable to finish in the points, which is of course when he lost the majority of the points that Walther and Weiss have on him. Karhan, on the other hand, has been mighty consistent apart from that little mishap, and the same can be said for Theo Borenstein, suffering the same fate in the grand final at the Red Bull Ring. But then, apart from that, always being in the top 2 of each race, apart from race 3 at the Salzburg Ring, where he had finished in 6th. Speaking of hot streaks, David Walther is still yet to finish outside of the podium. And Elia Weiss, on the other hand, is on a 2-race win streak. Can he make it 3 in a row, which hasn't happened since last year? Or will he be able to fight but not win this one? It was Gino Trappa last year who took 3 consecutive wins between the Salzburg Ring and this round in Most. So who knows, maybe Jenzer's happy hunting ground will continue to give them satisfaction. But of course, we still have plenty of other drivers. Watch out for Simon Rechenmacher, for example. He starts down in 9th position because of a more difficult 3rd race where he had finished on the podium but then received a 10-second time penalty for jumping the start, which has therefore worsened his total points scored today, which means that he had lost time and places on the starting grid too, thus dropping behind 2 of those drivers that could potentially fight for the podium. One of them shares her name with the lady that you're seeing right now, and that is Mathilda Patz, as she celebrated her birthday yesterday by doing a very good job to finish in 7th in race number 1. She was also part of the fight in race number 3 for the top 6, together with Ella Häkkinen, the young daughter of 2-time Formula 1 world champion Mika, representing the colors of the Czech flag, as the Czech Republic welcomes her with open arms. And she is very young yet extremely talented, just like these lovely people that are having a lot of fun on the lake, almost going overboard, but thankfully managing to stay on. But of course they will be itching to go back to the ground to watch the racing unfold, and we are ready to get closer and closer to the start of the formation lap. Just 1 minute left on the clock before we begin with the final formation lap of this weekend. So, getting ready for the formation lap, Elia Weiss will lead the way for the final time this weekend. He has been on a roll here in Most, 2 victories between races 2 and 3. He has been sort of unbeatable, especially when the lights go out. He was super quick to react on both occasions. He was starting in 2nd, remember, in both races 2 and 3. But straight out of the gates, he was in the lead thanks to a great getaway. So, we start the formation lap. It's time to talk a bit more about the 4.2 kilometer circuit where we are racing this weekend. Opened in 1983, Most is one of those racetracks that truly has it all. Long straights like the one that brings us to one of the best overtaking opportunities. This one, turns number 1 and 2. A very large chicane where sometimes you go 2, 3, who knows, maybe even 4 wide towards the opening corner of the racetrack. Then after the first chicane, a bit of a stretch towards the next gaggle of corners, and after that the most technical section of the track starts. Turns 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 are the most technical. These little left-right handers that you see that bring us to turn number 10, which we have skipped unfortunately, but that is a hairpin that brings us to the second half of the lap, which is completely different from the first one, because the first part of the circuit is more filled with slow corners where rhythm is pretty much non-existent and drivers have to place their cars correctly all the time. On the other hand, in the second half of the lap, you have these very long and sweeping corners that the drivers love, because they can truly make the difference here. They can feel the aerodynamic changes on the car, the weight shifting from left to right as the aerodynamic grip kicks in, which is why racing in Formula 4 here is so exciting. That is what the drivers have been telling us, not just today, but in these last few years, ever since coming here from 2023. And then after these very fast flowy corners, we have a bit of a stretch towards the final 2 turns of the circuit, turns 20 and 21, 2 right-hand 90-degree corners, where sometimes we can see some brave moves, especially here in turn 20 around the outside. There's a lot of grip on the left-hand side of the track, which is very important to notice, especially for those who want to try maybe some more desperate or aggressive moves. And then of course you're back on the start finish straight, and then back towards yet another long and exciting lap in Most. We're waiting for the last car to pull in, and that is Albert Pijarik in the number 11 entry, and then we will be racing once again for the 4th and final time this weekend in F4 CEZ. Elia Weiss starting from pole position. Max Karhan and Theodor Borenstein waiting behind. The green flag has been waved. So for the final time this weekend, we see the 5 red lights come up and go out. And we go racing here in Most once again. Phenomenal getaway from Elia Weiss, who says, thank you very much, everybody. I will be keeping the lead into turn number 1 as the 2 Jenzer teammates, Karhan and Borenstein, go side by side, and there's a huge crash involving Ella Häkkinen and also car number 61, and that is Alexia Danielsson, unfortunately. What a very unfortunate way to end both of their races. There's also one of the Mathilda racing cars involved. There may have been Mathilda parts as well. We've seen someone completely miss their braking point towards turn number 1. There's also a 4th car, I think, involved in the crash, and there's of course an immediate safety car. The hit was pretty brutal, and therefore it's no surprise to see the safety car out. I fear this could be quite a lengthy process to recover what I think is 5 cars out of the race, if I saw correctly. Yes, it's exactly 5. Unfortunately, the 2 that we talked about before, Ella Häkkinen and Alexia Danielsson. Of course, the marshals quickly making sure that everyone is all right. But as the pack moves towards the end of the opening lap, unfortunately, we have to understand whether or not all drivers are okay, first of all, and then trying to figure out who will be missing out on points. But then, of course, as we could expect, the red flag has been brought out on track. It will be impossible to recover those cars with 27 other F4 pieces of machinery flying through turns 1 and 2. Therefore, we go back to the pit lane and wait for more information. So the clock is stopped at 23 minutes and 25 seconds. Here you can see the replay. Unfortunately, it's a bit difficult to understand what's happened. I think it may have been Alexia Danielsson just missing her braking point. Maybe this will be an even better... Yeah, she just broke way too late, losing the backhand, hitting both Mathilda Paz and Ella Häkkinen. Unfortunately, crashing out of the race. Thankfully, though, we can see all 5 drivers out of their cars. Involved is also car number 9 of Dean Pedersen, the American. Unfortunately, out of contention straight away. We talked about the big potential of both Mathilda Paz and Ella Häkkinen to do some great stuff today, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen. Not today, as they will be out of the running in this 4th race. such a shame for them, as well as for Dean Pedersen. Simon Rechenmacher also is out of the running, and then Alexia Danielsson is the 5th and final car involved in the crash. We saw plenty of drivers having to take to the escape roads, trying to avoid the incident, either cutting the second corners or just going straight at the first chicane down the escape road to avoid any debris or avoiding any damage to the floor of the car. So all 27 remaining entries follow the safety car into the pits. They are now stationary, and outside of it, here we can see, yeah, look at Alexia Danielsson's car. You can clearly see how she completely missed her braking point, going straight into the side of Mathilda Paz and Ella Häkkinen. That must have hurt as well. A huge crash, including 5 different cars, but thankfully all drivers seem to be okay. Completely missed her braking point, did Alexia Danielsson. But thankfully all drivers seem to be okay. But unfortunately we have lost 5 cars into the opening 2 corners. But I mean, look at the efficiency of the marshals already, recovering almost every single car apart from Dean Pedersen's. Naturally, the incident itself is under investigation, as we would have to understand whose fault was that, even though it was pretty obvious that it was Alexia Danielsson who unfortunately missed her braking point. You see the 3 girls talking about the incident with Dean Pedersen and Simon Rechenmacher looking at the stranded number 9 car of Pedersen. Such a shame also for Simon Rechenmacher. He had been mighty competitive this weekend, once again fighting for podiums, and he had gotten one as well in race number 3 before a penalty put him outside of the top 10. And this, unfortunately, the premature end of this race for these 5 young drivers. But of course, they will have plenty of time to regroup ahead of the next round, which will be once again in the Czech Republic, though this time at the Brno circuit. Another stable presence on the F4 CEZ calendar. Has always been here ever since 2023, hosting 1 race each season, before then the final race weekend of 2026, where the drivers will go at the Hungaroring in Budapest, as the Hungarian racetrack will host the series for the first time since 2023, and it will do so for an incredibly exciting season finale, where we will be crowning our champion. And so far it looks to be an affair between Elia Weiss, David Walther, Theo Borenstein and Max Karhan, the 4 drivers inside a space of 30 points. All 4 of them still in the running, all 4 of them occupying positions from 1 to 4 in this race. Let's have a look at the replay once again. Gosh, could have been even worse, probably, this accident, with Alexia Danielsson almost going airborne after slamming into the side of Mathilda Paz. You can see how she just locked the rears as the car tried to go to the right. You could see the back end of her car slipping away from her, and by that point she was just a passenger. You will see it again now. Look how the car turns to the right before the impact, which is probably a good thing so that it wasn't a T-bone crash, rather a side-to-side impact. And as you can see, all 5 drivers walking with no issues towards the safety vehicle and back to their garages for what will definitely be a short debrief for them. It's very, very difficult to finish the race like this, especially mentally for, I think, Elia Häkkinen and Matilda Paz. Nothing they could have done there. It was impossible to see that accident coming. They were already out of turn 1 towards turn number 2. That was impossible to avoid. But meanwhile, we have 10 minutes before the safety car restarts. And that is great news, because we are getting closer and closer to go racing once again. When Elia Weiss will, for the 3rd time this weekend, have to handle a safety car restart after a red flag. We've had it in races 2 and 3 for Jorge Bruno, the DriveX entry, who had crashed twice in 2 races. But I mean, we talked about this yesterday, how Weiss should be prepared for outcomes like these, having to pretty much reset mentally. It's almost a completely different race now. But to be honest, he's done it twice, so why not do it one more time as well? On the other side, it will be Max Karhan behind him, a situation that we've already had earlier this morning in race number 3. Karhan was able to put Weiss under pressure, especially in the second half of the race, but unfortunately for him, there was no way through on the German. And then after another brilliant performance from Theo Borenstein on Saturday, he is back on track now. Of course, there's also this dynamic of those drivers who had raced twice on Saturday and had to wait until right now to come back on the racetrack, which means that they did not partake in race number 3, and maybe they're slightly colder. They're not with the adrenaline pumping from this morning, which could be potentially even an advantage should they prefer being a bit fresher. But you know, having to wait for the green flag to go, and then for the red flag to take it away from them after just a minute and a half was definitely not what they want to happen. But of course, they have to deal with this, and they have to deal with the consequences of what happens on track. Here you can see the cars waiting. And naturally, we have to wait for confirmation. But I think maybe Danielson could receive a post-race penalty because of that accident. Though, of course, this will be all done and communicated via the social media channels and websites of the championship. Meanwhile, we have to focus on the race, which will be restarting in about 6 minutes as we get ready to restart. And you can see drivers still in their cars waiting for the pit lane to be opened. Behind the top 4, we have Alexander Bogunovic, and he has been one of the strongest drivers outside of the top 3 teams. Those are Jenzer Motorsport and Karhan. The SG Motors entry of the Slovenian has been very consistent this year. Plenty of times inside the top 10 in all but 2 races, honestly. A best result of 5th, not just in the 3rd race at the Red Bull Ring, but also this weekend in the opening race here in Most. Bogunovic just waiting and waiting and waiting for that first podium to come, and that is exactly what Francesco Coppola is also saying. He was so close to making it in race number 2, as we said before. Now he sits in 6th position. Behind him, Marcas Shirkunas, the other Jenzer Motorsport driver, who this year has tasted a podium, finishing 3rd in 2 races at the Slovakia Ring. Meanwhile, the slow motion of the contact, you can truly see how Danielson smashes into the back of Matilda Paz, instantly breaking off her rival's rear wing, and then unfortunately clattering into the side of Elia Häkkinen. There was also nothing that Simon Rechenmacher could do on the far left, or Dean Pedersen on the far right, as the American just touched the rear of Matilda Paz, having nowhere to go, unfortunately for him. It was definitely not what these drivers wanted out of the start, but unfortunately that's what happens usually in racing. Meanwhile, having a look at the standings, now promoted into the top 10 are Leo Nielsen, Mio Ohlert and David Gorczyca, with Victor Poulsen in 11th. Let's not forget that the top 15 score points. This has been another change in the rules and regulations for this season, given the amount of cars signed in for each and every round. The organizers have wisely chosen to switch to a point system that rewards not just the top 10 but the top 15 of each race. The winner gets 25 points, just like in any other FIA regulated series, but then things change. Second position gets 20 points, third gets 16, then fourth gets 13, fifth place earns 11 points, and from there until 15th place everyone earns 1 less point than the guy in front. So 6th gets 10 points, 7th place gets 9, you get the gist of it, until P15 that gets a single point. So far this season we've had a total of 41 drivers scoring points, just 8 that haven't been able to do so. One of them is Nikolai Dirved, one of those drivers who failed to qualify to the grand final this weekend. Very unfortunate for him. He was very close to scoring points at the Salzburg Ring, but this year a tougher year compared to the last one, where he was fighting for podiums and race wins consistently. Same can be said about this year for Noah Nölken, the German, still waiting for his first points. And then of course there are some drivers who have only partaken in 1 or 2 rounds. The last one to join the series is Ivan Simenova. The Austrian has been quite quick this weekend, though unfortunately problems in the second race she has partaken in saw her miss out on qualification for this grand final. We should be just a couple of minutes out from the race restart. As always, after a red flag, we will have either 1 or 2 laps behind the safety car, usually 2, and then the timer would already have started to count down already. And then after that, the safety car will come in at the end of the lap, and we will once more be ready to see some green flag racing. You can see here the paddock of Autodrom Most, as we get ready to restart. There's only a minute and a half left almost before our restart, as the cars get ready to follow the safety car out of the pits. It's unfortunate, of course, that we've lost already 5 drivers, but that sometimes happens. But now we need to focus on the 27 that remain, with Elia Weiss leading the pack, Max Karhan and Theo Borenstein following through. And as we hit 15:47 local time, we will be getting ready to restart the race. You will see what happens when the safety car will leave the pit lane. That will signal the restart, the official restart of the race. But unfortunately, we've had a further delay, and therefore it's now 5 minutes from the restart. So we're going to have to hold our horses a bit longer, unfortunately. The marshals just finishing up on the racetrack. There were a lot of debris on the circuit at the first 2 turns, and therefore marshals have worked tirelessly so far to make the circuit available to everyone and safe for anyone to race on. Of course, this gives us a bit more time to chit chat, and I think this is the perfect time to talk a bit more about the Formula 4 car. Of course, a very new addition since 2021, the tightest F4 T41, a car that has taken the world by storm, as in it is used in basically every single Formula 4 competition, especially those regulated by the FIA. Tightest has been a phenomenal partner for junior single-seaters, of course, making cars for plenty of different championships, such as Formula 4 Levels Series, Formula Regional, with the brand new car coming this year, GB3 as well now being partnered with them. The Formula 4 car that we are witnessing right now first began testing almost 5 years ago in 2021, and the car made its debut in the United Emirates back in 2022 in the F4 UAE Championship, and then was basically widely selected by many different championships. The car was used in F4 CEZ for the first time in 2023 with the rebrand of the series after the short experiment that was the ACCR Formula 4 trophy. But it is a staple in Italian F4, Spanish F4, British F4, and many other championships like Formula Winter Series. Of course, a different version of it was used in F1 Academy, and then in such other championships around the world as well, with the F4 Southeast Asia Championship in China and Malaysia, the F4 Saudi Arabian Championship, the Australian Formula 4 Championship, and the NACAM F4 Championship in Mexico. Just highlighting how important this car really has been in the last few years, and a great work from the guys and girls down at Tatus for making a car that is quite light, only 570 kilograms including the driver, and has around 180 to 185 brake horsepower. It is a very good piece of machinery, especially for Formula 4 racing, which is usually the first stepping stone for drivers who want to follow the dream of becoming a Formula 1 driver out of karting and into lower formulas. F4 has always been the best opportunity to do so. It has been great to see these drivers grow as well, especially those who have been here for more than one season. My mind goes straight to Max Karhan. This is his 3rd year in the series, but from last season as well we have plenty of returnees. For example, David Walther, who had competed in 4 of the 6 rounds. Matilda Paz, who had raced throughout the entire season, also taking a podium place last year at the Red Bull Ring. Theodor Borenstein had his rookie year in 2025 in the championship, and we saw just how good they were in the previous seasons. And of course, seeing them progress and become even faster this year has been an absolute treat. But of course, we also have some very good new additions. Elia Weiss, for example, is one of them. Let's not forget that the German had already tasted what it meant to race in a complete Formula 4 campaign. He did so in the 2025 Italian Formula 4 Championship with Karhan Motorsport before switching to Jenzer this year, racing in Vallelunga and Monza, taking 4 points finishes in what is arguably the most competitive F4 series in the world. Of course, F4 CEZ now being a strong second contender given the amount of cars and talents on the racetrack. And speaking of racetrack, we are finally back on the way for what is the fourth and final race of this weekend. You can see every single car now filtering through towards turn number 1. We have been waiting almost 25 minutes to come back racing, but we are back out on track, the clock ticking, and the drivers behind the safety car. The safety car will complete at least 1, if not 2 laps before giving Elia Weiss and the rest of the field time to prepare for the restart, which Weiss will command at his liking, which will then bring us back to green flag racing for what is the fourth and final race here in Most for F4 Central European Zone Championship, that has grown massively in numbers and talent since the opening season back in 2023. Of course, Jenzer Motorsport still being the prime candidates for the team title and the driver's title, though this season Mafia Racing has been wonderfully quick, together with David Walther taking 3 wins and a total of 10 podium finishes in the 10 races that the drivers have contested. Naturally, we have 4 races per weekend, but each driver can only race as much as 3 times throughout a specific race weekend, therefore the number of races. And of course, we have to remember that we unfortunately have lost one of the races along the road, as the 4th race at the Salzburg Ring could not be completed due to heavy rain and strong winds, and therefore the race was cancelled. Thankfully, none of that here, despite some heavy rain yesterday. As you see, now the cars coming through the penultimate corner. We will have 1 more lap behind the safety car before the restart. And tensions will be high, especially in the garage for Jenzer Motorsport. 3 of their drivers in the top 3. Of course, Jenzer is a team that needs no introduction in the single-seater world. They have been very, very competitive across their years in Formula 4. Not just that, they've also raced previously in F3 as well, now having left the sport at the end of the 2024 season. They are still very present and dominant here in F4 CEZ and in other Formula 4 championships, such as Italian F4 and the E4 Championship, the Continental Series, that has been around since 2023. Jenzer, a team that, of course, is based in Switzerland, founded by Andreas Jenzer in 1993, and it has driven fans to the track to watch them grow into one of the best teams at this level. There has been plenty of drivers that have made it not just to the top of the motorsport ladder, but to Formula 1 as well, such as Yuki Tsunoda, a former F3 driver with them in 2019. They have fought long and hard in Italian F4 as well, winning the driver's title with Marco Siebert in 2016 They've had plenty of strong drivers across different categories, but it's now time to focus because the safety car is about to come in at the end of this lap. And we are ready to witness the restart. Here is the safety car with its lights turned off. It is about to peel into the pit lane. And as we hear the roar of the 27 remaining F4 cars coming towards the final couple of corners, we can safely say that we are back on the green flag conditions. It's once again race time here at the Autodrom Most, and it's been again a lovely restart from Elia Weiss as Max Karhan is now under pressure from Theo Borenstein. Meanwhile, behind David Gorczyca and Leon Nilsson go side by side. The same can be said for Borenstein and Karhan as Borenstein goes around the outside, and there's contact between the two Jenzer teammates, but luckily both make it through unscathed as they are able to come out of the first two corners without any further contact, I should say. But with Theo Borenstein now in second position, just ahead of Max Karhan. Behind, there's the Mafia Racing of David Walther, and then Bogunovic, Coppola, Silkunas, Nilsson, Gorczyca and Ollert, one after the other. Gorczyca now in front of Nilsson after that big overtake at the restart. He just timed it to perfection. The Czech driver, perhaps knowing this track a little bit better than what Leo Nilsson does, and that is why he was able to take advantage of it and put himself into 8th position. Now Elia Weiss is still leading things through with quite a bit of a gap over his teammates after that contact. Borenstein is now second, Karhan is third, with David Walther, the former championship leader, in fourth. Naturally, the drivers have to now find a rhythm, settle into it, and then start building back up to the actual speed that they can sustain for what is the next couple of laps, or the next 16 and a half minutes or so until the end of this race. Elia Weiss up top, a 1.6 second gap over Theo Borenstein. Karhan is third, then Walther, Begunovic, Coppola, Silkunas. Meanwhile, there's a car forced onto the grass and into the escape road. Couldn't quite catch who that was, but I think they have made it back in one piece on the actual track. But you can see now Max Karhan dropping to third and now into the hands and at mercy of David Walther, the Danish driver, looking very dangerous. Remember, Walther has never finished outside of the podium places, and he definitely doesn't want to start now to change this positive trend. As now we go towards the penultimate corner with the leaders, but still in the final sector with the other cars. As now we see a fight between Patryk Lipovic and Stefan Trenecki for 13th position, two of the final points paying positions, with Felipe Reis from Karhan Motorsport in 15th at the moment, but now having to defend from the Renault Motorsport entry of Andreas Lobue. Behind them Erik Poulsen as well. And then the sole DriveX entry left this weekend, Simon Antonio Bulbarelle, who was the only DriveX car to qualify for this grand final. He's now following these two, Erik Poulsen on the outside, Andreas Lobue on the inside, who will be the bravest under braking. It looks to be car number 2. A phenomenal job from Erik Poulsen, who runs Andreas Lobue wide and takes the position on the exit of the first chicane. Will Lobue retaliate, or is he forced to wait? I think the second option is the safest and the most accurate. That is exactly the case for both. As now we see the entire field racing towards the final sector. In front is Elia Weiss, a 1.9 second gap over Theo Borenstein. He has grown it by 3 further tenths. A 1:33.1 from Weiss, which is also the fastest lap of the race so far, and a 1:33.4 for Borenstein, a 33.8 for both Karhan and Walther, which have left them a little over a second behind Borenstein. Bogunovic is still in 5th, with Coppola, Sikunas, Gocica, Nilsson and Ollert rounding out the top 10, the 2 Swedish drivers at the tail end of it. Meanwhile, yet another lap, and this time it's Borenstein with the fastest lap of the race in a 1:33.1, gaining a 10th on Elia Weiss. Meanwhile, this is Felipe Reis going on the attack as we go towards the opening corner of the circuit. And that was good from the young Dutch driver, currently in 15th position and in the fight for the very final points paying position. Meanwhile, Lobue and Bulbarelle again fighting against one another. The Swiss driver still behind the Argentine, who has made the move stick at the start of this lap. Bulbarelle therefore climbing to 17th position. Meanwhile, the racing stewards have noted the incident involving Theo Borenstein and Max Karhan. A little touch that left Karhan behind, but unfortunately, speaking of touches, we've seen one of the cars go off, and I think that is the Drivex of Simon Bulbarelle, in the exact same point where his teammate had crashed yesterday. And another safety car has now been called out on track. We'll see whether or not that will last, or whether or not the red flag will once again be called out. For all we know, the safety car is on track once again, thus bringing Theo Borenstein closer to Elia Weiss, which is quite a shame for the German. He had a 1.8 second lead over his rival and looked very, very competitive so far, and pretty much at ease over Borenstein, who has climbed into 2nd position after that contact with Max Karhan, and then David Walther still in 4th place. So we see a replay of what happened. He just went wide on his own, didn't he? Perhaps maybe a slight touch from Andreas Lobue before the corner, but I don't think that was extensive contact between the two of them. So maybe just a lapse of judgment from the Argentine. Unfortunately, Drivex has yet another driver finding the wall, which is of course not ideal for their first year in the series. But now with 10 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock, the safety car is out once more. And I think, yeah, another red flag has been put out. That was inevitable, I think, given that the same contact and same accidents came yesterday, and we had the same exact ending. All cars will have to follow the safety car into the pits and await for further instructions. Bit of a topsy-turvy one, this one. A second red flag of the race, bringing the total amount of red flags this weekend to 6, as Elia Weiss heads the field into the pits once more for again the 6th time this weekend. He was almost praying that this would be the last of it, but I think we have enough time to restart with 10 minutes and 19 seconds to the clock. There's also confirmation that the safety car will then come out of the pits once more as the session will be resumed. So we still have everything to play for here. Just having to wait a short time for the marshals to recover the DriveX car of Simon Antonio Bulbarelle. I think this is going to be quite a short safety red flag period. We've seen the efficiency of the marshals time and time again this weekend, therefore I'm expecting nothing less from them. As now the fans wait once more for other news. Unfortunately, not the end that DriveX wanted to their race weekend. I mean, DriveX is one of those teams that has plenty of history in not just this championship, but in the entire world of single-seaters. As we look at the replay once more, they have been one of the driving forces in F4 for quite some time, especially in the Spanish championship. They are a Spanish team founded by former F1 driver Pedro de la Rosa in 2005, winning the title in Spanish F4, both in the drivers and in team standings in 2019 by the hands of none other, the current F1 driver for Alpine, Franco Colapinto. They have had plenty of drivers of great talent go through their ranks, as we are 10 minutes away from the safety car, from the restart behind the safety car after red flag. They've had one of the best GT racers around, Rui Andrade. Current F2 driver Oli Goethe was also part of the squad in 2019. Bruno Del Pino, current F3 driver, was one of the stars of the 2022 championship for them. And then they also had, who eventually went on to win last year's F4 CEZ title, Gino Trappa. They have also raced in the brand new Eurocup 3 championship. And then from this season joining F4 CEZ as well. They have been, of course, a very successful team in their years, but unfortunately for them, it's not really working out this season in F4 CEZ, struggling quite a bit, especially despite the good work by their drivers, Argentines Jorge Bruno and Simon Bulbarella this weekend, fortunately crashing out in the last 3 races. Piotr Orcholski racing in races 3 and 4, having a bit of a rough time, especially throughout this weekend. But I'm sure the DriveX will come back even stronger in the 5th round of the season next month, when we will be going to Brno. Such a shame, of course, for DriveX, as they cannot finish this race with the sole car that had entered this final race. But as we now get closer and closer to the safety car restart, we will be getting ready for these last 10 minutes that separate us from the end. I think this is a good time to, well, first of all, get a replay of what happened at the start of this race. This was the reason for the very first red flag. That was contact caused by Alexia Danielsson that took out herself. The other two parts of the female trophy, Ella Häkkinen and Mathilda Paz, and also Simon Rechenmacher and Dean Pedersen were caught in the aftermath of the accident. Nothing either of them could have done to avoid this. And then the second red flag caused by this off from Simon Bulbarelle of Drivex. Of course, a shame for them, but thankfully he is okay, and the car has basically been retrieved from the stewards, which is why we are getting nearer our restart time. So I think this is a great chance to take a look again at the standings so far. Elia Weiss is in first position, Theo Borenstein in second place, Max Karhan in third for a Jenzer Motorsport 1-2-3. David Walther then in fourth position with Alexander Bogunovic in fifth, Francesco Pio Coppola in sixth place, and Markas Silkunas in seventh position. David Gorčica is in eighth place, the other home hero, with Leo Nilsson and Mio Ollert rounding out the top 10. The siren that you just heard is a reminder that we are 5 minutes away from the restart. In the other points paying positions from 11th to 15th, we have Georgi Zhazov, Viktor Poulsen, Patrick Lipovic, Felipe Reis, and Eric Poulsen, with the North Macedonian Stefan Traneski just outside of the top 15. He will definitely be looking to enter it once more. Behind him, Andreas Lobue, Igor Polak, and Antonio Rigo, the Italian, who has struggled big time this weekend due to some very unfortunate accidents. He has been quite competitive this season. Unfortunately, here having what has been his worst weekend points scoring wise, taking only 2 points in the first race with 14th place, and having to retire at the tail end of the second race of this weekend. He was always in the top 10 between the Salzburg ring and the Slovakia ring. A season's best of 6th place in the opening race in Orehova Poton last time out a couple of months ago. Italy being represented by Rigo and Coppola this season, together with Ginevra Panzeri in the first couple of rounds. The young Italian scoring points on debut at the Red Bull ring, finishing 11th and 12th in the first two races, and then once again in the points paying positions at the Salzburg ring for race number 1. Of course, Italy having a great tradition of drivers, especially in Formula 4 racing. It's impossible to forget a certain Andrea Kimi Antonelli winning the Italian F4 title back in 2022. Of course, the driver then 4 years later is comfortably leading the Formula 1 World Championship. Meanwhile, car number 88 is under investigation for the safety car procedures. That is David Gorčica down in 8th place. So we will have to make a mental note about that. Meanwhile, there's only 1 minute to the restart, as we see from the graphic. So we're getting ready to watch the clock tick down once again. We will likely spend 2 laps behind the safety car once more, just like in the previous 2 races, and of course in the first red flag of this race. And then we will be ready to roar once more under green flag conditions, probably for 2 or 3 final laps in this race. So Elia Weiss taking place behind the safety car as the leader. The German is trying to win his 3rd race in a row, something that Gino Trappa was able to make happen and transform into reality last year when he did so between the final race of the Salzburg Ring and the first 2 races right here in Most. And this would be such a huge turn to the championship in favor of the young German. Remember, Elia Weiss, born in 2009, has just turned 17, born in Munich, and is definitely one of the most competitive drivers this year, not just in this championship but also in Italian F4, scoring points on plenty of occasions already with Jenzer Motorsport. And now we get ready to see the cars leave the pits. There's been another slight delay, but we are getting ready now to leave the pit lane for what will be the final 10 minutes of racing. I think it's very important for the drivers to stay concentrated. Hopefully they were able to do so. If you're just joining us, we've had unfortunately 2 red flag periods, which is why there's still 10 minutes left on the clock, but we are finally back out on track. And we can safely say that we are back racing once more. Less than 10 minutes left on the clock as the drivers exit the pit lane following the safety car. Elia Weiss in first position, just in front of Theo Borenstein, Max Karhan and David Walther. The Danish driver yet to finish outside of the podium this year. Will this be the very first time this happens, or he's gonna have to invent something, take something out of the magic hat he has, just like he did in race number 3, where he was sure to finish 4th, but then Simon Rechenmacher got hit with a 10-second penalty that put him behind the Dane. Unfortunately though, nothing on the sort so far today in this 4th and final race of the weekend, as he is in 4th position following the 3 Jenzer Motorsport drivers in front of him. Alexander Bogunovic in 5th. He is still on the hunt for a first podium, and who knows, maybe that can happen right here, right now, should anything happen to 2 of the top 4 drivers. Behind him, Francesco Coppola, Marcus Silkunas, David Gorčica, Leo Nielsen and Mio Ohlert in the top 10. And then the other Jenzer Motorsport driver of Georgi Zazov in 11th. Plenty of different nationalities being represented in the top 10. A total of 10 different nationalities in the top 15. Just showcasing how international this championship has truly become. Meanwhile, we go around one more time behind the safety car before being finally released under green flag conditions. As the drivers go towards turn 1, you see also some of the filler left previously from one of the entries in the GT Cup Series Championship that unfortunately had lost some fluid, but the marshals were quick enough to put filler down and make the surface perfect again. A track that has become hotter and hotter as we've gone through the day. Yesterday we did not go over 25 degrees either with the air or out on track. Today well over 30 for the track. It's still around 26 degrees in the air. It's thankfully not as hot as Friday was, where temperatures were up in the mid-30s. The rain yesterday, of course, helping out a great deal, making it possible for the drivers to race in a bit of a cooler weather. But that, of course, has also changed the plans for tire temperatures and especially for visibility for the drivers. 3 very different days. On Friday, full sunlight. On Saturday, full gloom. And now on Sunday, a mixture of both, as the safety car gets ready to come in at the end of this lap. We will be ready for yet another restart. Hopefully a clean one this time from here until the finish. A little under 6 minutes now, which means that we likely have 4 more laps until the end of the race under green flag conditions. Elia Weiss will take everyone through one more time, and we go right about now under green flag conditions. It was a good restart this time from Theo Borenstein. Is not that far away from Weiss. Last time out, Borenstein was able to overtake Max Karhan at the restart, and again Karhan hasn't had a great getaway, as David Walther is quite close to the back of him. But Elia Weiss, man, once again super good, and now David Walther dives up the inside of Max Karhan, making the move stick, and that is a perfect move from the Dane, who was able to get through, and maybe even Alexander Bogunovic can spoil the Czech party, as the Slovenian is able to slot into 4th. Out of nowhere came David Walther in that braking zone. That was incredible from the former championship leader, now 2nd in the standings behind Elia Weiss, who's on his way for a triple victory this weekend. But not if Theo Borenstein has anything to say about it. The driver's now going through towards turn number 13, the point of the accident last time around with Simon Burbarelle, which came roughly 6 minutes ago, race time wise, but around half an hour ago out on track. As we see now, another Mafia driver, this time Igor Polak, tried to make his way through. He's currently in 17th position, but now you can see the driver squirming towards the final 2 corners. That is Polak trying to go around the outside. Meanwhile, Andres Lobue has a black and white flag, sorry, black and orange flag. That is for damage to his car. He's going to have to pit next time by, ordered by the stewards to do so. He's already pitting now, thankfully, as now plenty of drivers go side by side. Once again, Polak leading that little field, as you can see. Bennett Gaspar in the bright green car as well in the pile, together with Michalina Sabaj, the pole for AS Motorsport, trying to gain a couple of places. Meanwhile, fights between Victor Poulsen and I think that was maybe Mio Ollert, but we'll see in due time, as Poulsen is at the tail end of the top 10. The Swedish driver trying to make it 3 drivers of that country inside the top 10. Meanwhile, unfortunately, Bennett Gaspar seems to have cut the entirety of turn 13. I think he might have a problem. Yeah, there's smoke coming out of his rear left suspension. That is unfortunate for Gaspar, who was not in the points paying positions, but was creeping closer and closer to them. Meanwhile, up the inside goes Felipe Reis on Erik Poulsen. That is for 13th position. We've now entered into the penultimate lap of the race. Elia Weiss still in first. Unfortunately, Bennett Gaspar has stopped in the gravel trap outside of the racing line. Here it is, car number 555. Yeah, not the best ending for Jenzer Motorsport, the Hungarian duo of team and driver, racing solo for quite a few years now in the series. And that is such a shame for him. Perhaps contact with some of the car, but he is definitely out of the running as of right now, but I think safely out of reach for any of the other cars out on track, which is why we're keeping green flag racing going. As we now approach the last two corners for the penultimate time, we're about to start the final lap of the race. It is Elia Weiss and Borenstein, the latter, putting two wheels on the gravel, almost losing the back end of his car. As we now race towards the final, for the final time into the opening chicane. It's Weiss, Borenstein and Walther, which is honestly the top three drivers perhaps of this weekend, though of course Max Karhan would like a word after winning the opening race under treacherous, windy and rainy conditions. But he has since slipped to 5th place in this race. Weiss now into turns 12 and now 13. He just has to manage this gap. He has been mighty quick throughout this weekend, always being the fastest driver, taking pole with the fastest lap in qualifying, and now leading the third race again. He was the only driver to win 3 races in the first 2 rounds, winning once at the Red Bull Ring, twice at the Salzburg Ring, and then after going winless in Slovakia at the Slovakia Ring, not only did he go back to winning ways in race 2, he repeated himself in race 3 earlier today, and now making it a treble of wins. Elia Weiss wins once more in the F4 Central European Zone Championship in 2026. He extends his brand new championship lead and is now a 6th-time winner in this series this season alone. Simply perfect. Utter perfection from Elia Weiss. An utter elation for Jenzer Motorsport, who take yet another streak of victories. It's 3 in a row here in Most. It's 4, giving Karhan's win in race number 1. But for Weiss is a 3-race win streak as he gets to the checkered flag first. Borenstein finishes 2nd, just like he did in races 1 and 2 this weekend. He's on a streak of 4 consecutive 2nd place finishes. And then somehow, yet again, David Walther finishes on the podium thanks to a spectacular move at the safety car restart, the 2nd one, over Max Karhan, who dropped to 5th behind even Alexander Bogunovic, who takes his best result of the season with 4th place here in the final race in Most. It was a very entertaining race, a very long one as well, with 2 red flag interruptions to recover the stranded cars. Well, first of the huge crash between Häkkinen, Matilda Paz, Simon Rechenmacher, Dean Pedersen and Alexia Danielsson. And then the second time around, Simon Bulbarelle stopped on track. Unfortunately, Bennett Gaspar here, chased by the cameras, also out of the running in the final stages. And the penultimate lap, unfortunately, came to a halt in the 3rd sector, but thankfully he was able to come out unscathed and the racing could continue under green flag conditions. What a story for Elia Weiss. He is able to take his 3rd consecutive win He is the dominator of this weekend, ahead of Theo Borenstein and David Walther in the grand final. Bogunovic, Karhan, Francisco Pio Coppola, Marcus Circunas, David Gorčica, Leo Nielsen and Georgi Zazov round out the top 10. Then of course we have 5 other drivers in the points paying positions: Mio Ollert, Felipe Reis, Erik Poulsen, Stefan Trenensky and Victor Snebjörn. Here are the other drivers from this 32 long car field. Unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to 5 of them on the opening corner of the circuit and of the race as well, because of that impact caused by Alexei Danielsson that involved Elia Häkkinen, Matilda Paz, Simon Rechenmacher and Dean Pedersen. But that is everything from us here at Most for F4 CEZ. It's been a pleasure to commentate these 4 races, and we are ready to go to another track in the Czech Republic next month. From the 11th to the 13th September, we'll be in Brno. Thank you for being with us, and goodbye.